Thank you for joining us for Open Line tonight. We are talking about the economy, where we are now, and perhaps where we're headed. Dr. Tarpey from MTSU is here with me today to help us walk through this discussion. We've covered a lot of ground so far, but I do want to remind people this is Open Line. This is your chance to ask questions. I have plenty right here, but I will give the floor to you. So go ahead and give us a call. 615-737+ is the number. We will take them just as quick as we can get them. We kind of left off looking ahead towards the holidays, and usually that is a big time of spending, even when we're talking about things like Halloween spending. I mean, people love to throw a party or dress up, and then we have the holidays and gift giving. What are signs from companies that we are seeing right now that say, they're bracing for something?
Some of the signs, of course, right now the companies are not positioned well because they've got the wrong inventory.
Yeah, that's true.
Nobody's going to buy a lot of home decor for Christmas gifts. Right. Although with the discounts they may.
They may. Maybe the hot thing this year.
Get a freezer for Christmas.
That's right.
Marked down. I think the challenge would be companies that are trying to, I almost said hospitals.
Your old life coming back.
My old life. Companies that need to reposition their inventory are going to be somewhat challenged, only because we still do have the supply chain issues. China being one of the big problems right now, which is where a lot of our imports come from, especially for Christmas type items, toys and that kind of thing. So companies are going to be challenged at this stage of the game. We're mid-August, I guess we're late August actually, almost the end of August next week. So we've only got a couple months. Orders had to already be in. So orders that have been in that have been delayed for the last month and a half, actually it's been a little longer than that. China's been locking down sporadically. So there's about 300 ships out in China waiting to be loaded. They just started loading those of orders that were already made. The question is, were those orders made last January? Are they the wrong item?
Right.
A lot of orders have been canceled. So if you go look at some of the interesting information out there, if you look at a lot of websites for shipping and all, companies have been canceling a lot of orders because it's just the wrong stuff. They don't need it anymore. Of course, they pay a penalty for that.
Yeah, you can't just send it back and say, no, you just keep it.
There's no refunds.
We don't want it, yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how much of the goods that people want for Christmas are going to make it into the United States if they're not manufactured here already. Last year we had this challenge a little bit. It didn't pan out quite like the dire forecasts were, which we would have empty shelves by after Thanksgiving. I remember telling my wife last year, hey, we got a 10-year-old, if you're going to get gifts, you probably ought to buy them in October because we might not have stuff. Because it's a one order and you're done. Companies aren't going to be able to order a second time and get another shipment. It's whatever, when it's sold out, it's gone. There's not going to be anything else coming. I think it's going to be a little bit like that again this year. Depending on whether some of the bottlenecks ease. We keep saying every 6 months, oh yeah, the bottlenecks are going to ease next 6 months. Economists, supply chain experts, we don't know. Well,
you're one of these supply chain experts. So
yeah, I shouldn't have gone there probably.
I know, but listen, I mean, that is one of the buzzwords throughout the pandemic now. I mean, we've all become aware of, oh gosh, so much of our stuff comes from overseas, so much of it. And there is this chain it has to follow, and that chain has been broken, and it is still broken. Which is crazy to me. I mean, we're 2+ years out from all of this starting. Yeah. What's the deal?
Again, we're back to things we haven't experienced before. So the supply chain on the shipping side is pretty close to resolved itself. But you got to remember, as you indicated, it's a long process with a lot of links. So now the problem is where we used to have, I think it was in January, we had 158 ships sitting off the California coast for Long Beach and LA port. Everybody heard about that. It was 150 to 200 ships. The last I saw in June or July, it's down to 80 something, closer to normal.
Okay.
Interestingly enough though, total ships waiting, and I just looked this up today, total ships waiting is back to 160.
Oh wow.
The difference is now 60% of those are waiting on the East Coast. So one supply chain analyst, and I love this, I'm going to use it, and I don't have his name, so I can't cite him, but he wrote an article in one of the trade publications, and he labeled this the Disneyland effect. The Disneyland effect is if you're in a line, and you can relate to this in traffic, you're in a line, it stops, so you move to the next lane. And you go a couple inches, and then that one stops, and the one you were in started going again.
Right, yes.
So he labeled this supply chain shipping problem as the Disneyland effect.
It makes sense.
So now the East Coast ports are starting to back up because a lot of companies said, Long Beach and LA are congested, I'm going to move everything to the East Coast. And that's not an easy decision either, by the way, especially coming from China.
Right.
It's a long route. The other piece that has caused companies to make that decision is the labor contract on the 2 ports in California, not Oakland, LA and Long Beach expired on July 1st. And they're negotiating, and we all know how that works.
That's right.
Right,
Okay.
so they keep saying they're going to come to agreement. Oh, we're not going to stop the ports. We're not going to stop the ports. But when it comes push comes to shove, if the agreement is not palatable to the union, they're not going to say, oh, well, we're going to try to keep the U.S. running. They're just going to go on strike.
Right.
Come on.
I mean, that's the pressure point.
That's the pressure point. It's all their leverage they have. So a lot of companies have stayed away from that. Even though negotiations are progressing, they're not at a standstill. A lot of companies said, okay, I don't want any part of that. I'm going to reroute everything to the East Coast. And now the port of Savannah is the most congested port right now. Houston is a little congested right now. Virginia is congested. But 60% of the waiting ships now are in the Atlantic, not the Pacific. So we've just moved the problem is what we've done. And then we already talked about there's still 300 ships getting loaded in China. I don't know where they're going to end up.
Right, exactly.
They're going to be
Where do
waiting
they
for a
go?
while, yeah.
Right.
Of goods that we may not even want.
Yeah. So this is not resolving anytime soon.
Not this year, no. And I would expect, I don't see any supply chain analysts really forecasting anything before the end of 2023 anymore.
Wow.
Because there's another piece we haven't talked about. So we do have containers coming in to the United States, and they're stacking up at the port because there's no truck drivers to move them anywhere. There's no trains to move them anywhere. So now we've got all this stuff at the 2 ends of the country, but we can't get it into the interior of the country. And that has not changed. We have not had a great deal of new truck drivers to replace the ones that have left for either COVID or whatever the case may be. And we can talk about this, but the drop in workforce participation, truck drivers are still a shortage. Trains have always been congested. It's only gotten worse. So even if we get the goods into the country, the problem is how do we get it to the stores?
Right.
And there's just stacks of containers at the ports right now.
I want to ask you this because I've said this before, and I've heard other people say it. So many people have left the job market. And people say, well, they're on public assistance. Public assistance doesn't get you very far. It does not cover very much at all. So what are people doing?
There's a lot of theories on that.
Okay, good. Tell me. Because I want to know.
There's a lot of
I think about
hypotheses.
this.
So let's start with the most obvious one. Individuals who were in their upper 50s, lower 60s said, I'm done. I'm going to retire early.
Okay.
They're not coming back, potentially. Now, with inflation, many of those
May
have said,
have
wait a
to.
minute, I got to go back to get a job.
Yeah.
The second piece of that is other people have found they can make money doing other things. So this whole, and I don't want to offend anybody, but the whole social media craze where people can make money dancing on a video or
Sure.
something.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a viable income, but it doesn't contribute anything to the economy, right? So as people start leaving productive jobs to start doing that, well, that's a problem. Is it for the labor force. It's not a problem for them. They're making money. Everything's good.
Sure. They
But
cover
that's
their bills.
people leaving the labor force. So we're having a lot of trouble in what I would say lower paying unskilled labor, which now is paying actually more. Unskilled labor wages have gone up at a faster clip than skilled labor in the last year, but they still can't attract people into the jobs. And then the other component of that is a lot of the unskilled labor, when it's front facing to the service industry, people don't want that.
They don't want to deal with other people.
No, you could pay me $22 an hour, and I don't want to sit at an airline counter. I don't want to work at a Wendy's where someone's going to throw their coffee at me.
Right.
And I did a piece on Morning Line back in January about unruly customers. It's just gotten out of hand.
It really is.
Because now people just feel entitled to not just complain, but belligerently, violently complain.
Yes.
Right? We read stories about hostesses at restaurants getting hit over the head, airlines getting smacked in the head.
Right.
It's just gotten out of control. So pay me $20 an hour. Who wants to do that?
Exactly.
I'm going to go find a job where I don't have to deal with people. Well, the problem is we need jobs right now. The jobs that are open are jobs that deal with people. Travel,
Says a
retail.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big problem. So a lot of people are sitting it out to the best they can, and we have savings. We had stimulus that came out. So what we're not able to, at least I haven't seen any good forecast of, when do people hit the breaking point where they have no more money?
Well, that's very interesting because I have done stories and stories and stories over the year that says, you know, Americans are terrible savers.
Yeah.
We don't have 401ks. We don't have retirement saved up in any way, fashion, or form. So it's like, what money are people sitting on?
A year and a half.
The stimulus was only so much.
That's true, but remember, they weren't spending much during COVID.
Okay, true.
Right? They couldn't.
Yeah.
So I would have thought we would have spent through that by now. Been proven wrong. People are still spending. I don't know where they're getting the money, but people are still spending the money.
Yeah.
Skilled labor really didn't lose as many jobs, So those individuals, myself included, we really didn't take a hit during COVID. You know, we actually built up some money because we weren't spending, and we still have our jobs.
Right.
So we still have money. Remember, housing was very cheap before and during COVID. So people were saving a ton of money. Interest rates for mortgages were, gosh, I don't know, 3%.
Yeah.
They were low. That's a big savings. Now that interest rates have started to creep up, a big chunk of people's paychecks are going to start going to housing. And even that's unpredictable because interest rates went up and then mortgages came down again when they weren't supposed to come down.
Right. Well, we're going to take a commercial break, and I want to talk about real estate because that is such a hot thing in Nashville. And boy, we can go 100 different directions with that. So we're going to be back in just a few minutes.